Semuanya, good morning. Welcome back to our campus. After how many weeks you have holidays? So ready for a new calendar academic, right? All right, welcome back to campus. And then today we are having an honor to welcome Professor Serena Diokno. She's our Emeritus Professor of History at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She's also the head of SEASREP Council, which is this year, which is already like 30 years old. So she's going to give us her vast experience and also knowledge about Southeast Asian studies and the current state of the art of studies. So don't worry, it's going to be in English, but and when this is time for question and answer, you can ask in Bahasa Indonesia as well. But Yuli, Dr. Yulianti is going to be moderator and Mrs. Kelly to help you out. But please try you ask in English first, right? So yeah, thank you so much, Maris, for your willingness to share your knowledge with our student. So this is the second day of our academic calendar, and then we have now this inaugural lecture for this semester. So thank you very much everyone. Now I'm giving the microphone to Mbak Yuli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mas Wahid, for giving the time to me. And actually, it has been introduced by Mas Wahid, who is our speaker today. But as moderator, this is also my duty to maybe a little bit elaborate on our speakers this morning. And we are also very happy to welcome our students to come back on campus and also, of course, to be present here. Starting new semester, and I would also to inform that last semester we also had class on the history of Southeast Asia, so this is very much a good time to again rehearse about what we have learned about Southeast Asia from our last semester, and now we are going to hear from the expert. Professor Serena Diokno, yes, PhD, is a Professor Emeritus of History, University of Philippines, Diliman. And as introduced, she is a Director of Southeast Asian Studies Regional Exchange Program, or which is known as SEASREP Foundation. And Professor Diokno specializes in the history of Philippines revolutions and the Philippines-American War. And also, she is edited some works, which I would like to mention maybe one or two. Hidden Life, Concealed Narrative, a history of leprosy in the Philippines. And also she is editors China's Footprints in Southeast Asia. So these all are very interesting books of what she had been working on. And today we are going to have opportunity to hear about an interesting perspective about Southeast Asian studies, the view from our end. So to start with that, I would like to invite Professor Diokno to come on stage and to give her lecture. And for all of you here, please take a note, and then also later on you can give questions to our speakers. Thank you. Time is yours.
Thank you for inviting me here. I think the last time I lectured here was in Bambang's class on economic history in, I don't know, 20 years ago. I'm now old woman, but that was 20 years ago maybe. So I was asked to talk about Southeast Asian studies. When I was an undergraduate student, like you're all undergraduates, okay, I knew very little about Southeast Asia because my department, history, only offered 2 courses on Southeast Asia. mainland Southeast Asia and island Southeast Asia. The very conservative, traditional way of describing the region. And at that time, if you asked me to a blank map of Southeast Asia, I could not do it because I knew so little about Southeast Asia. What I did was, when I went to the United States for my master's in Southeast Asian Studies, I was so insecure. I felt my classmates knew so much more about my part of the world than I did. So, to compensate for my lack of confidence, I read a lot about Southeast Asia. And that is lesson number 1 about Southeast Asian studies. There is so much ground to cover. You are talking about the histories, cultures, everything of 10 countries. And today 11, because East Timor has joined us. So imagine what we have to read to learn all of that. When I was preparing for the comprehensive exam in my master's class, I went to my advisor and I said, how should I prepare for my exam? And she said, what do you know the least? That's what you read. Oh, I ran to the library. I brought home shelves and shelves and shelves of books, mostly about Vietnam. I didn't know Vietnam too well. And read to prepare. So that was my lesson 1. Then also in my undergrad studies, I was made to read books like The Far East, a short history of the Far East. It's very strange because the East was not far from me. I live in the East, but I had to read books like this. Okay? So, the Far East during my time did not even include Southeast Asia. It was China, Japan, to a smaller extent, Korea, but no Southeast Asia. And today, of course, when you say the East, that covers a massive part of the world, including us. So, that is lesson number 2 about Southeast Asian studies. Even an area simplified as, quote, the East, has many perspectives and definitions, which change over time. Now, lesson number 3 comes from my experience as a PhD student at SOAS. But this was, how many? 50 years ago? 45 years ago? I remember there was a gathering, and one British professor said, what are you doing? What are you studying? And why in London? And so I said, well, I'm studying Burma. And I'm in London because the British, when they lost the colony, took all the archives and brought them to London. So I have to come here to study, to learn about Burma. And this was, you see that tiny blue dot, that was where the old India Office Library and Records were. No longer today, but in my time, that's where it was. In fact, from 1947 until 1972, the governments of India, Pakistan, and the United Kingdom were quarreling about the ownership of the archives. So that is my lesson number 3. In Southeast Asian studies, even if we are studying ourselves, we find it necessary to go outside, study in foreign archives, whose ownership was under contestation at one point in their life. Now, these are lessons, of course, that apply to more than area studies. Certainly, in our discipline of history, there are similar lessons. But you can imagine how magnified these lessons are when they cover an area broader than a single country. Decades ago, scholars who were doing area studies did not even know how to define it. An article in 1952, for example, said that the precise meaning of area studies was, quote, a little uncertain. So they were studying, but they were not sure what they were studying. Okay. If you look at these two quotations on the screen, you will find the key words as follows. Territoriality, you have area, region, so territory, one dimension of area studies. And then you have social sciences, okay? Mentioned here, social sciences with emphasis on international life, all right? International society, so check, social sciences. What about method? Well, the method was supposed to be scientific, okay, systematic, valid. So, method. And then perspective, you have different points of view, okay? And the last one was a certain kind of cohesion, the belief that Southeast Asia had some kind of political social unity. So these were the basic elements of area studies in the 1950s onwards. Now, half a century later, you jump to about 2000, and you have a more sophisticated definition of Southeast Asian studies. You still have territory, okay? You still have, well, social science, but not only social sciences, because it talks about multidisciplinary conversations, okay? And then you have a new method is introduced, N for new. And what is this method? In-depth field research. So not enough to just read the book. You have to go to the field of the area, do your research there. The perspective is also new. Here you have emphasis given to local histories, viewpoints, materials, and interpretations. So perspective is new, and no more cohesive Southeast Asia. Instead, what you have is more diversity in the region. Two new elements are introduced in this definition. Language. Look at item 1, intensive language study. Field research in local languages. Okay? The second dimension introduced was theory. Look at this. Testing, elaborating, critiquing, or developing grounded theory against detailed observation. So, new things develop over time. Now, there are also new meanings of territory. Okay? Look at this definition, 2014, 2012. Acharya says, regions are no longer physical spaces. They are dynamic, purposeful, and socially constructed spaces. So before, when you study Southeast Asia or any area, it's a physical space. East, west, northwest, southeast. But nowadays, it's not just a physical space. It's more than that. It is a socially constructed space. And if you look at the second quotation, it talks about Southeast Asia as a cluster of shared identity. So the element of identity also comes in. So if you go over all the checklists, you will find that this field of Southeast Asian studies has changed, especially the idea of territory. We all agree, okay? It's not just physical. And the region is not uniform. It is diverse. It is not singular, but plural. It is not static, but it is mobile and changing. All fields of knowledge, all that help us answer questions are relevant to Southeast Asian studies. Before, only international relations. You look at people who are specialists of Southeast Asian studies, they like to work in diplomacy. Today, no more. IT, digital world, everything is relevant to Southeast Asian studies. Okay. And yet, if you read the literature, there's so much being written that Southeast Asian studies is a dying field. Dying. Okay? Why do they say that? Okay, I'll give you an example. In Norway, the Nordic Institute of Asian Studies, alive for 55 years, just closed. Shut down last year. After more than half a century, no more money. Okay? In the United States, the major centers of Southeast Asian studies, Cornell, UCLA, UC Berkeley, Madison in Wisconsin, lost tremendous amounts of federal funding because they're crazy. Their president is a very narrow view of the world. You know? Cut the funding, and many of their programs are closing down. So there is this sense that Southeast Asian studies is dying. Now, some will say the evidence, Leiden University, how many of you studied at Leiden among the faculty? Almost closed last year. We got a letter, SOS, from the director. Please write the president of the university, support our struggle to remain open. They're going to cut funding, blah, 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 blah. Okay, they managed to survive, but their core funding will be reduced by 50% over the next few years. So the future of the program is still shaky in Leiden. And the evidence of that, loss of funding, falling enrollment, closure of institutes. Now, what are the causes of these crises? Well, one, they say that sovereign interests are changing. Oh, we don't care anymore about Southeast Asian studies. You know, Vietnam War, that finished a long time ago. And the conflict now between Cambodia and Thailand, not enough to demand European or North American attention. So they are interested more in other parts of the world, or maybe not even, given the foreign policy of the United States. Maybe they're not even interested. Maybe Greenland, Greenland studies, okay? Then you have the nature of the field. The nature of the field. What do we mean by the nature of the field? People always say, okay, so you finish a degree in Southeast Asian studies. What's that? Is that history? Anthropology? Politics? Archaeology? What will you do? Where will you work? What does the degree mean? So the nature of the field is also being questioned. And finally, that's it, the usefulness of area studies. Basically, what they are saying is that it's not a discipline, it has no real theory, so what is it? Now, the solutions that are being offered to solve this problem are four that I have found in the literature. One, you accept that the discipline is important in Southeast Asian studies. So me, for example, my degree is in history, but the area I specialize on is Southeast Asia. So I have kind of dual identity, history and Southeast Asian studies. That's one. Okay? The other is, well, you allow, I will explain this in a while, a range of commitments. People can mix, people can shift. Today I'm a historian, maybe tomorrow I'm area studies, and then the next week I go back to history. So I can cover both. The third option is, oh no, we must work in an interdisciplinary way. So when you study the region, you cannot only study the history. You have to understand the culture, you have to understand the economy, you have to understand many aspects of the region. The fourth option is, well, why not make Southeast Asian studies a discipline? And here in Southeast Asia, not at UGM, not in my department, but in other universities, you have degrees, BA in Southeast Asian Studies. National University of Singapore, University of Malaya, Thammasat University in Thailand, Chulalongkorn University. They also have in Vietnam. I think Chiang Mai in northern Thailand also has a degree in Southeast Asian Studies. In the Philippines, not for undergraduate. In my university, only at the master. And it's not even Southeast Asian Studies, it's Asian Studies, and then you major sort of in Southeast Asia. Okay? So some people are saying, no, let's make it a discipline, and that way we solve the problem. No more, the identity becomes clear. Let's look at each of these options. Okay, so here is an example of a range of commitments to Southeast Asian studies. This comes from a Japanese scholar, Tachimoto. Okay, what does Tachimoto say? He says, all right, maybe Southeast Asian studies can consist of a broad range of commitments. You have two worlds. One world is the world of your discipline. The other world is the world of area studies. In our case, that's Southeast Asia. So, in the world of the discipline, you have A, okay, which stands for the disciplinary specialists. These are, let's say, sociologists, very committed to their discipline and to the theory of their discipline, almost to the point of being purist. We don't care about area, we only care about the discipline and its theory. So that's in the world of the discipline. In the center, you have B, okay, called nominal area specialists, in name only. Why? Well, because sometimes the problem they are investigating requires them to gather data in a particular area. But they are really married to their discipline. But they will go to that area, gather some research, but they do not consider themselves area specialists. C, I don't know, maybe C is me, I don't know. Because C is a disciplinary specialist who does research in an area because of the discipline. Let's say our discipline, history. We have to specialize in the history of a place or a people. Nobody can know the history of every place, of every people. We specialize. So in your case, Indonesia. In the Philippines, Philippines. And for strange people like me, you add Burma. Okay? So you are a disciplined person, historian, but the nature of your discipline requires you to specialize. It's like politics. Okay, political science, does anybody here, have any of you taken political science? You know, poli-sci, they have many theories. In the Philippines, I don't know here, mostly Western. Does not apply. Cannot explain the insanity of Philippine politics. Okay, cannot. But, okay, still, when you think about the theories, you apply them to a place to see if it works. Or you try to develop a theory in a place where you study politics. So there are some disciplines that really require area studies. History, geography. Oh, you cannot take geography of nothing. No? And all. So those would be letter C in the world of discipline. Now, in the world of area studies, basically, you have in the center, D, the core of area studies. These are people who really are devoted to the study of a place or an area or a region. And there are two subcategories, E and F. E refers to general specialists on the area. For example, it's not me, but let's say I know a part of Southeast Asia and I know everything about it. Like I'm a generalist, I know its history, I know its culture, I know its politics, I know its economy, blah, 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 blah. So I'm, in a way, a general specialist on an area. And letter F, the last model, would be, F is the specialist, the area study specialist, who really wants to develop the field of Southeast Asian studies and work in a disciplinary way. So, where are we? Well, me, certainly I'm in C, because my discipline of history requires some area specialization. And I think I would like to be in partly F, but later I will explain. To me, it is not an issue whether Southeast Asian studies becomes a discipline or not. I think it is an issue in the West because they don't get money. They will get money only if their identity is resolved. Without a clear identity, funding from university, funding from their government is difficult. But here in the region, I think the story is different. Different because Southeast Asia is us. We live here. It will never go away, even if you don't like it. Because it's our home. It's what we breathe. It's what we eat. Every time I come to Indonesia, I listen to the words, so many words similar to words in our language. Puti, anak, you know, even the numbers, isa, dalawa, so many things are similar. Okay? So, that will never go away. Even if it is fashionable or not fashionable, it will always be relevant to us. So, in a way, what I have been presenting are problems from the point of view of the West. That's why the title of my talk is Southeast Asian Studies from our end. How do we see it? Because all the writings, publications in journals, all from the West. Oh, area studies dead. Southeast Asian studies, oh, about to die. Where will we go? What will happen? No more funding, no more this. Enrollment is falling, etc., etc. Now, the other approach to solve the problem is to try and work together, all the disciplines to collaborate. And there are three advantages. The first is intellectual. You know, when I work with non-historians, I learn a lot. Because they tell me things that I did not study, maybe, or they talk about books that I have not read. So always there is that kind of intellectual learning that takes place. The second is practical. You know, when you learn from other disciplines, it enhances your competencies. When you graduate and you start to look for a job, what your employers will ask for is your ability, is your practical knowledge, your mastery of basic competencies, your skill sets that you will acquire when you work with other disciplines. And then, of course, pedagogical. Pedagogical refers to learning. That there is a belief that you learn more when the disciplines collaborate. And if you only work within your field, then your learning becomes very narrow, just within your area. I like art very much, and I wish, I don't have it, but I wish I had the talent. But I don't have it. But that's why I like to learn from them, because they know so much, and I get educated about things that I don't know about, or that I myself cannot do, because I'm a historian, that's it. So that's another approach. And then, these are the types of disciplinary collaboration. Intradisciplinary, that means within the discipline. That's no collaboration at all. Well, it could be. For example, in the field of history, you have an economic historian, you have a social historian, a gender historian, a historian let's say, of indigenous communities. So within the discipline of history, one discipline, you work internally. That is one form of collaboration. Intradisciplinary, within the discipline. And then you have cross-disciplinary, which means when you say cross-disciplinary, what you are referring here to is you look at one discipline from the eyes of another discipline. For example, I'm a math professor, and I describe the rhythm of music from a mathematical viewpoint. So it's numbers. So I'm looking at music, but still as a mathematician. That's cross. Multidisciplinary, you see the level goes higher, higher you go up the ladder. Multidisciplinary means several disciplines working together on a given topic. Let's say history of women, okay? And then you have a political scientist who will look at women in politics, and you will look at sociologists who will look at gender practices in society. Then you have a historian who will look at the history of women and so on. So that is multidisciplinary. Interdisciplinary is even higher, a more integrated approach to understanding a problem or an issue. And the highest and most difficult to do is transdisciplinary. Transdisciplinary, almost you find a basis of unity for uniting the disciplines. That's very difficult, okay? Here I notice in Southeast Asia, we often interchange multidisciplinary with interdisciplinary. That's what I have seen in the literature. Okay, so most area specialists will settle for maybe interdisciplinary or even multidisciplinary. But in Europe, they think that's not enough. You have Vincent Hoben, who wrote an article. He calls it the New Area Studies, NAS, new. And what is new about it? This is what he says. If what he wants is for area studies to move, I'm reading from him, quote, to move into safer waters and become part of the main canon of university knowledge production, without always having to prove the reason for its existence. Because university administrators will say, well, what are you? What are you? What degree? What's that? You're not politics, you're not history. So what? A place? That's what you are? So they say no. The new area studies wants a discipline. They want Southeast Asian studies to become a full-fledged discipline, so that they will no longer be questioned by university administrators about their identity. But you know, when you look at it, new area studies is really a problem of the West, not of Southeast Asia. For example, you look at this, Okay, New Area Studies, NAS. This is what Boyker Raban talks about, a layered approach to New Area Studies. Look at number 1, rediscovery of local sources in local languages. I want to tell the Europeans that is not new to us. That's what we do all the time. You look at local sources. In fact, we have broadened local sources to mean not just archive, but oral sources, visual sources, all kinds of sources in local languages. For them, it's new. For us, it's not. Number 2, inclusion of local perspectives and perceptions. That's what we do. You look at all the researches that you do, the theses and dissertations that you produce. They are more often than not locally grounded interpretations. Third, development of new theories based on empirical work. We also do that, although admittedly, in my view, not enough. I think of all of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 3 is our weakest point. Number 4 is to universalize local theory. Something that applies only to one area can be applied to other areas or parts of the world. And I will give you some examples. And then the development of new epistemologies and initiatives. So I want to share with you, before I look at this matter of theory, a study that SEASREP, to which Wahid and I belong, we did this study where we scanned Southeast Asian studies programs and courses all over the region. And in a way, we were prompted to do this study because we were reading articles that kept saying Southeast Asian studies is dying. So we said, are we really dying? Because we feel very much alive. No? But are we really dying? So what does the data tell us? And you can consult the website of SEASREP. It's published in our website. Look at this. The number of degree programs in the region, okay? There are 90 degree programs on Southeast Asian studies. You know, when we started SEASREP 30 years ago, maybe there were only 5. 5, that's it. And now you have 90 all over the region. Different levels, some BA, MA, and then PhD, okay? And these programs are offered by 44 universities. Now, we looked at what courses on Southeast Asia are offered. There are over 1,000 courses about Southeast Asia, taught by, in Brunei, 1 university, in Cambodia, 6 universities, in Indonesia, 56 universities, Philippines, 36 universities, Vietnam, 25 universities. The bulk of these courses are at the undergraduate level. What about language teaching? These are the languages taught in the region. The least popular is my country's language, Tagalog. Maybe because they think we speak English, so why study Tagalog? I don't know. And the most popular would be Vietnamese, followed by Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia, and you have the other languages there. When I say languages taught, it means, for example, you are a Thai university teaching Southeast Asian language, but not Thailand, not Thai. Because of course your students, they know Thai. So you are teaching other languages except your own. Okay, so that's what we surveyed. What are the Southeast Asian languages being taught by universities in the region that do not include their own language? Okay? Then, number of journals that are published in every region, in every country. We now have at least 45 in the region. We do not look at the quality of the work. So, I have to tell you, I'm not sure if this is a good development or a bad one. Because you can put up a journal and then it can die in 2 years. Or you can put up a journal but it will contain not so good papers. And some journals, even here in Indonesia, I found in Philippines, they put in the title of the journal Southeast Asia, but when you read it, it's all about Indonesia, or all about the Philippines. So we didn't count them. So that's kind of cheating, because it's not really about the region. So what we counted are journals that really public articles about the region, or other countries in the region. And then, how many centers of Southeast Asian studies? Indonesia is the champion. There are 122 research centers in the region. 66% of them are in Indonesia. And of the 122 centers, 87 were established since 2010. Why? I think because your government wanted to push ASEAN. So they talked to universities here and said, okay, you put up ASEAN Studies Center. And we met some of them, the center directors, who were honest enough, I can speak honestly here, yeah, who were honest enough to say that they were created on paper by the ministry. But in fact, they do not have the expertise or the resources to really push and put forward and develop Southeast Asian studies. This is why we at SEASREP are working with some of your centers to see if we can convert them into really functioning Southeast Asian studies centers. Types of degree programs. We looked at all the degree programs being offered that deal with Southeast Asia or ASEAN, and we found different types. Some, like in UP, Asian Center, the degree is Asian Studies with concentration in Southeast Asia. Brunei is also like that. It's not Southeast Asian Studies, but Asia with concentration in Southeast Asian Studies. Others are called Southeast Asian Studies. A new kid on the block is ASEAN Studies. So many degrees now. BA, ASEAN Studies. MA, ASEAN Studies. PhD, ASEAN Studies. Not Southeast Asian Studies, but ASEAN. And then you have disciplinal programs. In UP, I think USM, University of Science Malaysia, they have a program in archaeology with concentration on Southeast Asian archaeology. So it's in the discipline, but with focus on Southeast Asia. And then you have some degrees that focus on sub-region. In Chiang Mai University in northern Thailand, they have like on the Mekong region, okay? So it's a sub-region of Southeast Asia. What about the types of courses? Well, one type of course is by the discipline. So you go to history department and you will say, history of mainland Southeast Asia. That's type 1. Type 2 is comparative or cross-country themes. For example, you say Indonesian literature in relation to Southeast Asian literature. So you compare. Type 3, it's about another Southeast Asian country. So here in Indonesia, it is a course on the economic history of Myanmar, but offered in Indonesia, so another country. Type 4, own country plus. This is Philippines, for example, your country, Indonesia, and let's say migration in Indonesia and Philippines. Okay, own country plus another country. And the last one would be courses on ASEAN. In my humble opinion, the most boring. Because who wants to know what the organization of ASEAN is? What the documents they make? And what you have to memorize or what? I looked at some of the courses, not so interesting. But that's my opinion. Don't listen to me. You read it yourself. But these courses are about the ASEAN organization. So the structure, the things that the governments of Southeast Asia sign and all of that. So those are the types of courses we have seen. Now, Thailand is the champion in teaching languages. Look, the green color refers to Thai universities. The blue, all universities in Southeast Asia. In every language, you will see that Thailand almost equals or approximates more than half of the languages taught by all. So Thailand is quite aggressive in language teaching. Oh, they teach Bahasa. They not only teach Bahasa Indonesia, they also teach Bahasa Melayu. You know, then they have Tagalog, all. They have, it's quite aggressive in Thailand. And then Thammasat University is our example of an undergraduate program, because they say Southeast Asian studies is dying. You see the record of Thammasat. Can you imagine? They have more than 1,000 applicants for BA, Southeast Asian Studies. In 2021, 1,036 applied. Only 109 were admitted. 2024, 1,428 applied. And only 105 were admitted. So it's an extremely popular program. Incredible. Incredible. And we learned from the Thais their technique in attracting students. They get their alumni who are now sometimes influencers or are successful in their field. They invite them to the university. They talk to the students in a convocation, invite the students to take Southeast Asian Studies. Their program also includes going to another Southeast Asian country for exposure, a little very simple field work because it's undergrad. But it's impressive what they have been able to do. So it's an immensely popular program. Now, how is Southeast Asian Studies described? In the University of Malaya, which just commemorated its 50 years, 50, last December, they call it interdisciplinary. This is in Naresuan University, they also call it interdisciplinary. In Chula, Longhorn, it is called multidisciplinary. And they talk about different faculties through the perspective of Southeast Asia. National University of Singapore, very multidisciplinary, free from narrow disciplinary boundaries, diverse perspectives, subject-oriented, grounded in local experiences. That's just from their website. So it gives you an idea of how they approach the field. This is the last part, because I mentioned earlier that I think one of the self-criticisms we can make is we are not theorizing enough in our field. I'm not talking about applying Western theories, but trying to develop theories from local experience and then using them to explain what we are. So there are three ways to theorize. One is you look at the Western theory and you apply it to Southeast Asia. Not always applicable. Number two, you develop a local concept and you try to universalize. Or you invent, you create a new one altogether. And the result, according to one Indian scholar, the concept should be able to travel. Meaning it will not apply only to Indonesia, but might also explain an event in the Philippines, or maybe in Vietnam, or some other part of the region. So I wanted to use this example. Another Japanese scholar, he developed this idea of a thick concept and a thin concept. He says a thick concept, it is developed from a particular culture or place. That's why it is thick, because it is loaded with local meaning. If you are a foreigner, you might have a hard time understanding it, but unless you understand the language or you understand the culture, okay, then that's what he calls thick. A thin concept is basically a Western one. So you apply a Western term, label, concept to a local situation. Now, I want to give you an example of a thick concept and a thin concept. So in the Philippines, we have the Katipunan. Katipunan was the revolutionary society founded in 1892 to resist Spanish colonialism. It was founded by very young Filipino men. One of them who was very smart and wrote a lot, he was only 17 when he joined the Katipunan. So they were young men who believed that the only way to secure independence was to expel the Spaniards. This was after more than 300 years of Spanish colonialism. So I looked at these documents, and these documents are very interesting. They're all written, handwritten in Tagalog. And guess where the archives are? Spain, correct? Because when the Katipunan was a secret society, okay? When it was discovered, the Spanish Guard, the Guardia Civil, seized all the documents they could find. They brought them to Spain. And they are not even in the regular archives. They are in the archives of the National Defense. Yes. So, thankfully, I was able to secure a copy of some of them that have been digitized. But there are many others that still not digitized. And I would like to spend some time in Madrid to look at the documents. Spanish historians, they don't use it because they cannot read Tagalog. They don't need to learn it. They don't want to learn because they think we were colonized by Spain. So they just read all the documents in Spain. I said, okay. So I want to go to that archive and use those documents. Now, in the Katipunan, the initial is KKK, shortcut for, ano yun, Katipunan, kasamahan? Kagalang-galang, kataas-taasan, katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan, of the noble sons of children of society. Anyway, so if you read their documents, you will find the word katipunan really means coming together of, they don't call each other comrades. They use the Tagalog term kapatid, which means, well, Tagalog is a very gender-free language. Sibling. Could be man, could be woman. Okay? So, the pagkakapatid, becoming a fraternity of siblings, is how you form the nation. So, the idea of creating a nation comes from the idea of pagkakapatid, becoming that brotherhood / sisterhood, because there's no specified gender. Okay. As an example, so this was written by the young guy who joined the Katipunan at 17. And the title is Gising Now, Wake Up, Wake Up, Wake Up. He wrote this before the outbreak of the revolution. If you read this document, it's handwritten in Tagalog, he's very frustrated because he thinks that Tagalog, the Filipinos are moving very slowly. He wants them to wake up and act. Okay? In this document, he says here, I will translate already in English, but if you see it from the beginning, ang bawat isa'y lumingap sa lahat. Each one cares for the other, and all care for each one. Okay? Then he says, kayong lahat, all of you, are true brothers and sisters. Why? Because it's the same blood that runs through your veins. It's the same sun that awakens your eyes. Huh? Iisa ang lupang, you were all born on the same land. Okay, you were all born on the same land. And then he says that sun is the one that warms your body. And he says, you all suffer the same injustice. and difficulty. So the idea of kapatid is not blood relative. It's shared. Shared land of birth, shared pain, shared suffering, shared identity. But the conceptualization is through the term kapatid. If you look at their documents, I don't know if I put here. So there, that's the word kapatid. K-A-P-A-T-I-D. So many documents. It's another document. The signatory is in code. They do not write their full name because it's coded. Okay, because this was still the time when the Katipunan was secret. So I cannot put the name Bambang or Wahid. No, maybe I use different letters to mean him. Okay, but if you look at the document, they always say kapatid, kapatid. This document is really a letter of solicitation because a member of the Katipunan lost the, is it a child? What does it say? Because there are so many like these, lost a child through illness. So what they wanted to do was to collect donation. On the left is the name of the donor, the member of the Katipunan in code. On the right is the amount that each one gave. So every time somebody suffered illness or a family member died, got sick, you will see so many documents like this in the Katipunan archives. You want to ask a question? Yeah. Kapatid, oh sorry, kapatid means brother, sister, sibling. Yeah, sibling. Kapatid is sibling, brother or sister. Okay? So, they say, so if you look here, tinanggap ko ang halagang ito, I accepted this amount in the name of my brother or my sister, but they do not give the name. Now, in this document, this is what this document says, I translated. On this matter, it was agreed by all who see here the condition of our brother, blank, 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 because they don't say the name, it's code, to donate as much as a brother can for our brother's suffering and to recognize the true love of homeland and of brother. What struck me was the pairing of homeland and brother. They do not mean brother blood relative, but brother born on the same land. Okay? And if you look at this pairing, pagkakapatid, forming that brotherhood, that nation, is a thick concept. Fraternity, the English word, is what I would call a thin concept. Because fraternity has many meanings. Pagkakapatid means, in this revolutionary context, coming together to a point where you sacrifice what you have to help a brother in need. Okay? So this is an example for me of using a concept that would explain. Here is my final ending. This Apadurai, okay, he compares what he calls trait geography with process geography. Okay, trait geography implies that a place is a fixed physical space with fixed traits. We know that places are not fixed. Boundaries change, they merge, they move. The typhoon happens, there's a big flood, it destroys one place, the river cuts across. But in trait geography, the old-fashioned idea was that geography is immobile. In process geography, the theory is that things change in a given area. They go through a process. Cultural, political, environmental, social. And obviously, the more proactive theory here would be process geography. Within this, I have found several theories that one could use. One is the idea of circulation. This comes from the work of this group of Claude Markovits and some Indian historians who talk about the idea of circulation in post-colonial India. It's fascinating. When they talk about circulation in India, they are not only talking about the physical circulation. They even talk about the circulation of religious images, ideas. You know, so it's very broad meaning. Not like before when you say circulation, it's physical. Goes from one place to another place to another place. But in the new ideas now, circulation refers to, it's more than migration, it's more than transportation. It implies, I'm reading from them, a double movement of going back and forth. So in circulating things, men and notions, they often transform themselves. Now, there are two other geography-related concepts. One is geobody of Tongchai, Winichakul, which I will refer to in a while. And then you have Willem van Schendel of Zomia. Van Schendel borrows the term Zomi, which is a certain word in Tibeto-Burman languages that means a highlander. And he refers to all the communities that are in highland areas, starting from the Himalayas to China, all the way through Southeast Asia to Tajikistan. In his study, Van Schendel says there are millions and millions of people living in these highlands, he invented the term, Zomia, who are stateless, in the sense that they have no papers, they freely move across boundaries, no passport. They don't need to, because that's where they live. They move that freely. So it's a different way of looking at geography. Okay? And as for Tongchai's concept of a geobody, actually I wanted to relate it to a broader problem. How do you give a face to a body, to a nation? Nation is a very abstract term. You know, when we were reviewing the curriculum for grade 4 in children curriculum, okay, so the Department of Education before asked me if I could help. So I asked the teachers, at what age, how old should the student be when we introduce the concept of a nation? Because it's very abstract. With you, I can use it. I'm sure you understand what nation is. But if the child is 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, can you introduce the idea of a nation? So it's a question in our field, what face or what character do we give to a nation to explain it to people? And I found two interesting ones. Okay? What I call embodiment. The first one is you humanize the nation. So the nation is a human body. And I would refer here to Jose Rizal, our national hero. The human body. He used the human body to describe the Filipino nation. The other one is you use the map, a map, to describe the nation. Geobody, which is Tongchai, Winichakul's work on Siam, on Thailand. So if you look at Rizal, he wrote The Indolence of the Filipino. Of course, that's translated. He wrote it in Spanish. But you know, when he wrote this in 1890, he used many medical terms to describe the Filipino nation. So the doctor, the physician, was the Spanish government. And he included the friars. Then the patient was the Philippines. Okay? Malady, illness, according to the colonizers was, the problem is Filipinos were lazy. That's what, that's what colonials thought, Oh, these Malays, they're lazy people. They don't want to work. The Spaniards wrote a lot about laziness of Filipinos. and then bloodletting, plaster. He used all medical terms to describe these problems, the problems of the Philippines. But listen to what Rizal says, okay? Yes, Rizal blames Spain, but he also admitted the weaknesses of the Filipino. This is what he said. I'm reading from him. A man in the Philippines is nothing more but an individual. He is not a member of a nation. He is denied the right of association. So he is weak and slow. The Philippines is an organism whose cells do not have an arterial system, the blood, the arteries, or a nervous system to communicate its impressions. Okay? Now, a century later, here comes Thai historian Thongchai Winichakul, who talks about not the human body to describe the nation, but the geo-body. In his work, what Thongchai does, he looks at the earliest, the 19th century maps of Siam, which the kingdom used, so that they could they could separate Thailand from its neighbors. They used the map to say, this is Thai, this is not Thai. So he called it a geo-body. With Rizal, it was a human body. With Thongchai, it was a map. So geographic, a geo-body. And it tells you, this is who Siam is, we, self, and this is who the others are. They are different from us. So the geo-body in Thongchai's work consists of not just land, but practices, cultures, values that describe the Thai nation. Okay? So two contrasting images immediately come to mind. The actual was Rizal. Rizal was very honest. He said, in the Philippines, there is individual progress, but not national. The individual can achieve, but not the nation. Okay? So he was very critical as well. Natural human body. With Thongchai, the geo-body was a representation of what the Thai kingdom wanted. Of course, Thai society is not homogeneous. They have indigenous communities, they have different cultures, they have different belief systems. Not everybody is Buddhist. There are Muslims in Thailand. It's not all homogeneous. But the geo-body represents the ideal. This is what Siam should be, according to the map approved by the king in the 19th century. So every society, I don't know enough about Indonesian history to make a comparison, but there must be something here that we could find. But I could only compare, let's say, Thailand and the Philippines, and they're 1 century apart. They don't come. So I went to this trouble to try to explain that we can use local concepts to explain who we are, and to compare one country and another. If we use, because everybody does field work, we all do research in archives, but I think where we lack an initiative is to go beyond the research and to look at what concepts emerge and how these concepts can be used to explain Southeast Asian studies. So I think I talked too long, so I will end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Diokno, for a very fascinating lecture. So I think there are a lot of problems that has been actually raised in the talk of Professor Diokno, mainly about how are we going to see about our Southeast Asian history from the perspective of Southeast Asians, I think. So I would like to invite comment and also discussion, questions from our audience, please. There is one course, the history of Southeast Asia.
So how many courses of Southeast Asia do you take here in history? One? One only. So you are worse than my time. My time we only had two. And when I graduated, I think I didn't know anything. Oh, it is two to cover the whole region. So you only take one. Oh, Pakwahid, I think we have to do something. Only one course on Southeast Asia. Okay, so all the courses are about Indonesia.
Actually, I'm from geography, the alumnus of geography regional development major. But there I have one one course of Southeast Asian study about Asia regional geography about ASEAN in my major, and that's only it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think in my experience, because of course I can look back, I think if you learn a little more about the region, it really can open your eyes to other countries' experiences. And it will enable you to compare. You will see, you might even understand yourself better. Because I like to tell people, because I studied abroad for my master's and my PhD, yeah? And sometimes you become more Filipino when you are abroad. Because you see how different you are from the place, the society, the culture you live in. You understand yourself better. I think the same with Southeast Asian studies. When you learn about other countries in the region, then you even appreciate yourself more. Because it gives you a different perspective, a different way of looking at your problems. I'm sure there are many similarities across the region. I know that for a fact. So do you have questions?
Teman-teman bisa bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia. He's going to ask a question.
Oh, okay. The Filipino will ask you.
I'm your student like 15 years ago. I'm Eli Inigo. I'm from the Philippines, but I studied my master's here in Indonesia.
And you are teaching here?
No, ma'am, no. I already graduated, so I'm just living here, just based in Yogyakarta.
You live here?
Yes, ma'am. Malapit na rin mag-asawa.
Okay. Kaya pala. Sige.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you for your talk, ma'am. It's a very refreshing information po yung... sorry, I'm talking in Tagalog. The information that you shared about how the institutions in Southeast Asia fares in terms of the area studies is very refreshing and very thought-provoking. But my question is, how can we make more academics that will be specializing in Southeast Asia? Because we're talking about institutional level, but it doesn't show how many specialists or how in terms of research, how much can we study more between ourselves?
Yeah, we have data about the research in our study. I didn't include it because it still has to be verified. So I was afraid to cover it, but this is what I discovered. Okay, if you look at the case of Thailand, you go to Thailand, you will have Thai specialists on Southeast Asia. Some specialize on Philippines, some specialize on Myanmar, some specialize on Indonesia and speak as Indonesia. Some specialize on Vietnam. Vietnam is the same. There are researches done by Vietnamese scholars who specialize on the Philippines, who specialize on Thailand. In other words, they work on countries other than their own. But in my country, which I think is like yours, when we have faculty who study abroad, they study themselves, still the Philippines, and then go back home. So as I said, I'm strange because I chose to work on Burma. And my reason was very, I don't know if it's practical or what. I just said, I'm sure when I go back home, I will only be able to work on Philippine archives. So while I am abroad, I want to learn something new and different and be exposed. And that's why I chose to study Burma. But I looked at Burmese peasant indebtedness. Because when I was looking at the money lending practices of Burmese peasants during the British colonial period, it reminded me of the practice of Filipino peasants during the Spanish colonial period. And I said, I already know Philippines, but I don't know Burma, so maybe I'll study this. And that is what kind of opened the door. So when I took my PhD, I decided to continue my interest in Burma. The problem is when I studied in Burma at that time, it was at the height of the dictatorship. Ne Win, well, it's passed on, but had just established the military dictatorship, and since then, Burma has been under control, but during that time, you could not enter. You could not research. The country was closed. Archives were closed. The first time I visited Burma, of course it was still under military rule, but the universities were shut down. They closed the universities. There are generations of young people who never went to university. Never. Okay? And when I met some of their professors and they said, oh, Maris, why don't you come here and lecture? I looked at him, I said, lecture? What are the students? And his reaction was, shh. It was so controlled. Now I don't know, I think it's still like that, I don't know, because I haven't been there recently. Okay? But what I'm saying is that in answer to your question, the desire to go beyond learning about yourself still has to be developed in some countries. But the most advanced, in my view, in terms of research work on Southeast Asia, you will find that specialization developing in Vietnam and Thailand. Of course, you have Singapore, Singapore and Malaysia, because these were the earliest to establish Southeast Asian Studies program. So, a member of our board in SEASREP, she is from University of Malaya, but she works on Thailand. She speaks Thai. But she works on southern Thailand because that's also close to the border with Malaysia. No? But she is always specialized on that. We know another former member of our board before, Malaysian, but he worked on Vietnam and studied Vietnamese and can read it. But I think that if there is interest, it can be developed. It should be developed because there's so much you can learn. And even about yourself by studying the region. Yeah, I think sometimes we get so involved in studying ourselves that we don't always see the connection with others in the region. But that's my opinion. But the honest truth, I have never researched in Burma. No. Because I don't like to go if I don't like the government. Like I don't like to go to the US. Because I don't like the orange guy. Yeah. But I did work in the British archives where the colonial records are kept. And it's also an interesting experience to work in, well, Spanish archives or the Dutch archives for Indonesia. I have a young colleague, Wahid knows him, who studied at Leiden and his specialization is Indonesia, but he's Filipino. Indonesia is the easiest for us because the language is quite similar. Burmese, very hard. I forgot everything I studied. No, because I didn't use it. Yeah, didn't use it, so I forgot. Okay.
Okay,
Any other question?
are you done with the explanation? So we have one more question here from Mas Farabi, one of our faculty member.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mali. So I was really interested in your presentation and especially Vincent Hauben's, what do you call it? Yeah, NAS. Yeah. How, I mean, for Indonesia, for instance, we have very little, or we feel like we have very little connections to, like for instance, continental Southeast Asia. We don't know much about them, and how, you know, is it possible to have this like region that is constructed in as an approach, as a disciplinary approach, when even within the countries themselves we don't even feel connections to parts of it. That's a, you know, I think that's a main
Sure.
question.
You know what I'm finding here? Okay, there are two kinds of Southeast Asian studies specialists in the region. Maybe I'm simplifying it. One is you specialize on another country. Okay, so you're Indonesian and you study Burma or Malaysia and you study Vietnam. Okay. The other is you study a theme in the region. Like you have, for example, migration specialists, because there are Indonesian laborers in Malaysia, Filipino laborers also in Malaysia and in Singapore. So you look at migration. It's a theme, and then you look at it throughout, across the region. So those are what I see as the approaches. There is no move here, really, to push towards that strong, solid, disciplinary work. And I don't even think it's necessary. I think it is a problem in Europe because their funding gets cut. They cannot survive. They don't know how to explain who they are. So to survive, they have to develop. But in Southeast Asia, we are freer. We are freer, we can compare, we can study each other. So in a sense, we are more liberated than our Western counterparts. In the US, it's terrible. UCLA lost at least $1 million in funding. Many of the Southeast Asian Study Centers are funded by the Title VI program, and Trump cut it for many universities. So many centers are closing down or getting money from foundations, private foundations, but not from the government. And it's a serious problem for them. So in answer to your question, is it possible for us? Yes, and let's not worry anymore about the problem of should we be a discipline, it's not our concern. I'm very practical. For me, it's not our concern. Our concern is study each other. That's it. So you are interested in politics, then you compare. Thailand just had their elections last week. So for those who are studying Thai politics, it makes an interesting case study with what Myanmar just had their elections the other month. So, you know, there are many areas of comparison, but the big difficulty with area studies is the language. To learn the language. Like I said, even Spanish historians will not look at those archives because they don't read Tagalog. So, but that's why you collaborate. In SEASREP, what we did was we collaborate with other countries so that we can cover broader ground and we can make comparison. It's really impossible for one person to know everything. I cannot do that. Even if I study 10 lifetimes, I will not know everything. Impossible. So it's good to collaborate with other disciplines, collaborate with colleagues from other countries. Earlier, who was I talking to? I was talking to Maitri, one of our board members in SEASREP, who was saying that he has the minutes of the board meetings of the Historical Commission in Myanmar, because it gives you an idea of how they define their history and that kind of thing. And I told him, we, not me, but in the Philippines, The Historical Commission also has the minutes of all its meetings. So I asked him, you want to take a look at it? Maybe you can write. He says, no, let's do it together. So we can compare. There are many possibilities like that. But as I said, it starts at your level. Open your eyes through courses that teach you these things, and then you develop an interest. And it becomes possible.
All right. Any other question? Do you have somebody else at the back? If not, then oh yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for the chance. My name is Ryan. I'm a student from Department of History. So it is known that the topic of Southeast Asian history is quite difficult to research because one of the reason probably lack of resource, lack of the source for the research. So what I want to ask is, in your opinion, as a researcher on the history of Southeast Asia, how do we face the challenge of the lack of resource? At some point, accept the fact that there are some limitations that we can explore the topic.
Resources are always a challenge, no? But let's look at it this way. As undergraduate students introduced to Southeast Asia through courses, you could start by looking at, let's say, journal articles and books. Just reading it. That's how I started. Because when I went for my master's, I really was so insecure. Because I looked at my classmates, I felt they knew so much about Southeast Asia. I didn't know. So double time, read. No archives yet, just read, catch up, and feel more confident about the region. And I think it's possible in the beginning. The need for resources comes when you're at the master's level or the PhD, because then you will need to do field work or archival work. And for almost 20 years, that is what SEASREP did. We were giving funds so that students could study another language or they could do research in another country, but in Southeast Asia, not in Europe, not in the US, only within the region. But of course that program ended, which is also a story in itself. You know who was funding that program? You would think the most logical funder is ASEAN, correct? Because we're studying Southeast Asia. Wrong. ASEAN doesn't care. 2 Japanese foundations were funding. So it puts us to shame, because our own ASEAN governments would not even give this kind of fund. And now they talk about regional community. That's only talking. They're not actually putting the money where it could help create that regional community. So at the undergraduate level, I do not see a problem of resource. It's really finding, creating courses that would introduce the region and then make it interesting for students to want to study. Before Bambang knows this, we had the traveling classroom. Traveling classroom, we would support, I think, 14 or 18 Southeast Asian students travel. The first year, you start in Bangkok, then they went up northern Thailand to Chiang Rai, cross the border, cross the bridge, they're in Bangkok, cross the other one, they're in Laos, then go back down. Another year from Bangkok, they went all the way down south, ended up in Malacca, and then Kuala Lumpur. And then one time, Bambang Randi started in Jakarta, you went to Bandung, I think you also went to some rice fields, and then you ended up here in Jogja. Along the way, the students were meeting each other from Southeast Asia, there were lectures, they were watching movies. Students your age, and we ran that for, I think, 7 years. Again, did ASEAN fund? No. Useless. I approached them last year, ASEAN section of Philippines. They told me, oh, come, you apply. I presented the proposal with the board. And then we discussed, oh, very good idea. Submit your proposal in October, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, October. Rush everything. Submit proposal, submit budget. October of 2024. Now, already February 2026. Any response? Zero. Nothing. So I know they're not interested. So this fund now, this year, Wahid is helping us. The National Historical Commission of the Philippines will organize a traveling classroom of Filipino students about Islam in Indonesia. So this July, they will go to Jakarta, and then Ciamis, Bandung, Ciamis, and then end up in Jogja. I hope you will meet the Filipino students and integrate with them. I will not be there because young people only, old person no more. Only. I think Wahid will take it. Next year, another batch of Filipino students, hopefully, will do Islam in Thailand. And then the next year, Islam in Malaysia. But before, we used to do this for Southeast Asians. Now only Philippine group because the Filipino Historical Commission will fund them. I went to the commission. I said, oh, we have this project, and they said, okay, and they will fund. Philippines, more than 90% Catholic. But we have to, in Mindanao, in the south, we have a large Muslim population. When I say Catholic, at least Catholic in name. Like me, in name, yeah. But we have, so it's an exposure to understanding a different, not just religion, but culture, society, people. It'll be good. They will travel about 12 days, something like that. We spent, before in SEASREP, we spent for everything. 14 days travel, all over the students went. It was good, good. But that also takes resources, and that was for undergrad students. So if we can only find someone to fund, that would be good, but I don't know. Yeah. Any other?
All right, any other question?
Here. Okay.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Erlanda Prisdadullah. I'm an undergraduate student in UKM. So I will ask, in the teaching of history, many different perspectives are inevitably used. In certain cases, different historical perspectives emerge when discussing conflicts between one country and another Southeast Asia. For example, Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia and Thailand, and even Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Or even conflicts within a single country which will certainly be understood from various perspectives. How can these differences in viewpoints be addressed, since they will certainly create certain stigmas or labels toward a country? It is possible to reach an agreement on historical perspective regarding Southeast Asia without involving external parties, maybe the Western historian.
Is it possible for what? Could you speak a little slower? Is it possible for?
Is it possible to reach an agreement on historical perspective?
An agreement?
Yes.
On historical perspective? No. No, of course not. Historians, we never agree on our perspective. That's what makes our discipline interesting. No? We don't believe in a single party line that imposes a perspective and we must all agree. No, boring. I will not take history if it is taught to me that way. The life of any discipline is really freedom of ideas, freedom of perspectives, the freedom to disagree with one another as long as the disagreement is based on evidence, not based on personality or I like you, oh, he's not my type, oh, that one I like. No. There has to be evidence. Okay? Empirical evidence, or there has to be a basis. Okay, so that is what also makes Southeast Asian studies very interesting, because there are so many diverse perspectives. And learning a discipline really means listening to different points of view and learning from each one, even if you don't agree. You know, in my university when I used to teach, well, I'm retired, when I used to teach, okay, so my students, I think they know my position on most political issues, okay? So there was a time when we had American military bases in the Philippines since the colonial period. And the treaty was coming to an end in 1995, I think. 91, okay. So I used to join, go out to the street, rally, stop the treaty, no, don't renew, get the American bases out. Of course my students knew that. They know because they see it. So I would tell them, in my class, if you think you will pass my class by taking the same position as me, you are mistaken. Because me, I know the basis of my position. I read the documents, I read the arguments in the Congress. At that time, after the war, senators were still arguing in Spanish. I read them, each one. So I know why that is my position. But if you will take that position only because you know that's my position and you want to pass my class, then you are making a big mistake. Because since I know all the reasons, I will ask you. And if you cannot give me your reasons, then you will not pass, even if we agree. Because the point in history is not agreement on a perspective, is knowing the evidence and being able to make an argument. How you interpret and argue your position. That is what is important. So I tell my students, even in the end, if in the end I do not agree with your position, but your historical reasoning is good, you get a good grade. It doesn't matter if I don't agree, because I'm after the evidence and how you argue your case. That's the important thing. In history, in any discipline, of course in Southeast Asian studies as well. So, then okay. How do you say? The parameters are clear, huh? They know. But thank you for your question. Any other question?
Any other question or maybe comment? Or you would like to put forward your thought on your perspective about how to study Southeast Asian history as Southeast Asian people?
Yes.
Yeah?
Next question.
And is there any from this? Yeah, you?
So I want to first introduce myself.
So you show your lovely face.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Maria. Let me introduce myself. I'm Gani. I'm from 24 in history in Gajah Mada. I just want to ask about the clarity in my while I'm pursuing this degree. So I want to like what's the way I can collaborate to produce scientific and comprehensive thematical Southeast history while I'm or other students pursuing this degree. Because if I think I can reach the most comprehensive works in Southeast history with combining multidisciplinary like archaeology, any language, in Malay language I've taken in second semester, and in the history, how can I combine them to increase the comprehensive in our substance in the historical perspective work. That's all.
So you want to know how you can collaborate, is that the question, with other
degrees in order to reach
Other
comparative-
disciplines?
Yes, other discipline.
In Southeast Asian studies.
Southeast Asia studies.
Okay. You know, I looked at the courses here in UGM on Southeast Asia. You have a course on cinema in Southeast Asia. And then there was not enough, not so many, but there were a few courses that I found. Of course, it would be good, this is just my opinion, if maybe more courses were created, were offered to young people about Southeast Asia. Not just cinema, but it could be about art, it could be about women, it could be about indigenous communities, it could be about protest movements, or, you know, revolutions in Southeast Asia. So many interesting things. If these courses were offered, I think you would be more confident to collaborate. But if you don't have enough knowledge or background, it's not so easy in the beginning. But the other thing is, you do what I did. I just read by myself. Because I was in a foreign country. I did not want to look stupid. Yeah, because I felt I didn't know enough. I said, I have to know. So, read. I had a very good, strict professor in the US. You know her exam, master's level? She told us, okay, normally exam teacher asks you the question, correct? Then you sit down and you write your essay, correct? Now, her style different. In front of the seminar, one by one you go in. Okay, she will ask you, what is your question? And you answer it. So if your question is stupid, then your grade is stupid. Because you ask a crazy question. In other words, the question you ask must be profound enough that it will stimulate your mind to think, to answer. And that's when I realized it's not easy to make questions. You think it's easy for professors to make questions, but not so. I had to do that, and in front of everybody. So you have to read everything, then you think of your question must be intelligent. And she said, okay, what do you think your answer is? And then you discuss. So some of our exercises were like that, not always written. Some were, others were oral. The worst one was when I was taking my minor was on Latin America. That was even worse. Because guess how many students in class? Just me. 3 hours. Me and the professor. So I said, what will I do? He said, read. 7 books a week. Read. Or 3 books for just his class. 3 books, I don't know. Because when you go to him the next week, you just sit down there and you talk. And he asks you, well, what do you think this author said? Well, you know, 3 hours, just you and him. You cannot escape. You cannot, because you cannot point to another classmate and say, uy, you answer. Yeah, sure. But then you learn. He was a very smart guy. I like that professor. Very learned. And you could ask a lot of questions. And Latin America was easy for me because it's similar, because of Philippines, Spain. I can read Spanish, so not so difficult. But demanding because I was the only student. And I said, what will I do in this class? He was, read, and then talk, read, talk, like that. 1 semester. So I had many kinds of experiences in graduate school abroad. Interesting. The worst was SOAS. I don't think Bambang had this professor because his advisor was still young when I was taking my class. We had this professor who was a specialist on Malaysia. Very British. And that seminar, I was not required to take it, but my advisor said, oh, just take the class. Okay. Every semester, every week, somebody in class must present a paper on some topic. Okay. First day of class, Malaysian guy. And he talked about tin mining. Tin mining, I don't know, Perak or somewhere in Malaysia, tin mining. And you submit early so everybody has a copy. The professor comes to class like this. He has the paper, walks in class, here is his table, and he says, this paper will do in Kuala Lumpur. It will never do in London. He froze. We all looked at each other. Oh my God. And you know, in my class I had Thai, Malaysian, an American from Yale University, me, a Japanese, I don't know, can't remember the others. First day of class, and he throws it like that. Never do in London. Oh my God. So everybody was scared when your turn comes, because you cannot escape. After that one, you. And then the next week, you. So when my turn came, it was about Philippines. So I talked, Then he asked, first he asked questions. He sits there, okay. Then he asked him, what about this? And then I answered, it's a good thing, the question he asked, I knew the sources. So I answered, well, this, And he says, oh. So, he said, Filipinos make good historians. He said, so I looked at him. I did not know if he was being honest or sarcastic. So I said, Professor Bastin, are you trying to make fun of me? And you should have seen Ian Brown, your supervisor. Ian Brown's face fell because nobody talks to that professor like that. But me, I did not know. I want to know. Are you insulting me or what? You know, when you tell me I'm good, I want to know. I'm really good, no? But he said, are you trying to make fun of me? And for the first time that semester, he smiled. And then he said, no, I am complimenting you. So I said, okay, in that case, I accept your compliment. And then we became friends. When he was teaching his undergrad course, and it was about Burma, he called me. He said, can you teach my course? Can you teach that? I said, what? You want me to teach? He said, yes, you know it. And when I came to his class and taught, he sat there and watched the whole time. And I taught British undergrad. I think it was an undergrad class, yeah. So I prepared my lecture, and I discussed. When I told my supervisor, another British, do you know that Professor Bastin asked me to lecture in his class in Burma? And my supervisor said, very correct. He said, is he paying you? I said, no, of course not. It's an honor. It's an honor that he actually, and my supervisor said, oh no. He must pay you because he is paid to teach. And if you will do that job, he must pay you. I said, no, please, don't ask him, don't say anything. But I think he talked to him. Yeah. But you know, we have all kinds of experiences. And the confidence comes from reading. Our tendency when we study, we always think of the obstacles first. Where are my resources? Oh, how do I collaborate? Oh, how do I do this? No. First, read. Read. Study. And good thing I enjoy reading. You cannot be a historian if you don't like to read. Come on. I love it. So read. And that's the source of your confidence. Then when you know that, then things become easier. But I have all kinds of professors. The other one, I had Thai classmate who dropped out, didn't finish her dissertation because of our advisor. My own supervisor in UK, in London, in SOAS, he was supervising me and a Singaporean lady. And the styling in SOAS is, when you do your PhD, you must submit, even if you apply for a PhD, your entry level is MPhil, Master's in Philosophy. You must submit the equivalent of 2 chapters of your dissertation. If you pass, then you proceed to the PhD and they change your entry, your PhD level. If you fail, you remain MPhil. Okay? He passed me, but he never passed the Singaporean lady. And she would talk to me all the time and complain, he doesn't pass me, because he told me she's good only for MPhil. That's how they are. She cannot do PhD. I said, okay. I don't know what she was doing, but different standards, different ways of doing things. But when I put all my experiences together, you become a stronger person, a better intellectual, more confident of yourself and ready to face all kinds of challenges because of what you faced. Nowadays, no more. Nowadays, you cannot do what the professor did, or students will complain to the dean, oh, this professor very cruel, blah, 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 blah. But my time, I had all kinds. And you learn. For me, that's but anyway. An old woman is talking. Enough talking. Okay, no more question?
Alright, so I guess that was very good closing that is ask you to read. So we are also going to add your reading hours, yeah? Through reading materials in the class. Is that okay? Sounds good? Alright, so since Professor Diokno mentioned several times Pak Bambang's name, so probably Pak Bambang would like to say something on relating to what has been mentioned by Professor Diokno earlier.
Thank you very much, Marisa. You remind me when our lecturer asked us to submit one paper every week. That what I did when I was doing my master. I just want to mention something, maybe share our story. We created 2 languages class. One Vietnamese, one Thai. No, not me. We created here. We created 2 classes, 2 languages classes. One Thai and one Vietnamese. But I don't know what happens now. I think no. There many students at the time, but no more class now. That's a sad story. And then we already had Southeast Asian history of Southeast Asia. That's already a long time ago. And then we created two more subjects. One, what we call it, a very famous one, we call it the Emporiums,
Yes.
Asian Emporium.
Do you still do that? UP still we teach.
Yeah, Asian Emporium. We created Asian Emporium. The second one, and then I created Economic History of Southeast Asia. But all now stop.
You know, Asian Emporiums is still taught in University of Malaya and my university.
Because people consider, this subject are not important. I think this is a very sad. Economic History of Southeast Asia, I created it, and also the Asian Emporium as well. So let's see the younger generation, at least I'm talking about the history department. I think they need to think about to create a new subject courses on Southeast Asia. In the past we have ethnography of Southeast Asia as well. We call it No, in anthropology. Yeah, I think that's very. And we have somebody now, Indonesian, but he was hijacked to develop Indonesian studies in Thailand.
So Thailand got him?
Thailand got him. Now, he is now in Thailand, in Bangkok, in Thammasat, and in... Yeah. So, Indonesian studies grew in Thammasat, outside, but not Thai studies here. That's a sad story. Then I just tell my story on this, All of them, really, went through the SEASREP part. So that's the whole thing. I mean, I spent maybe 10 to 15 years, working on this. And fortunately, we still have a Center for Southeast Asia Social Studies here. Nah, still here. That's only one, in the past.
But you also have ASEAN studies.
Yeah, we have ASEAN studies, but at the Faculty of what do you call it, politics, social politics. So that's only, I just want to share this kind of story.
But, Dr. Bambam's account demonstrates how aggressive Thailand is. That they will hire an Indonesian to go there and teach Indonesian studies. That's how aggressive Thailand is. And they have student enrollment very good in Southeast Asian studies. And they require Thai students to learn another language, not Thai, but Tagalog or Bahasa or any language. But they require undergrad.
Yeah, I think now the best is in Thailand and Vietnam.
Yes, I agree. That's what our study shows.
Yeah. But not really. Indonesia is really
Philippines, no.
also. So now I think
But it's honest. I'm honest.
that's all.
Disappointing.
For all of this.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you very much, Pak Bambang. And also, please join me to give a round of applause to our speakers today, Professor Diokno. And I would like to invite Mas Wahid to give a little souvenir from our department as a token of appreciation to Professor Diokno. Please come.
What is it? Your book? Thank you. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's raining yesterday. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mas Wahid, would you like to...
That's only, thank you so much again, Marius. This is student. Our student are just starting to try more reading about Southeast Asia and the story about actually a couple of years ago the subject history of Southeast Asia. We have two actually, modern and pre-modern one. But the university and the Indonesian government really forced them to graduate as soon as possible, so they have to merge so many courses. And then even like history of Asia, we used to have like the history of West Asia,
Yes.
East Asia. Now, combined together in one. It is. Julie can tell more about how hard it is because we have to squeeze so many aspects.
So our government's a problem. ASEAN also.
Oke, thank you so much again, Maris. Terima kasih semuanya. Ya, semoga banyak yang bisa dipelajari hari ini. Seperti tadi disampaikan, kuncinya cuma satu ternyata, ya. Apa? Nah, kayak gitu. Jadi nanti di kelas-kelas yang berikutnya, semester 3, semester 4, semester 5 akan lebih banyak bacaan di kelas, ya. Terima kasih semuanya atas kehadirannya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang.